Imagine you finally make it home after a war, and 10 more lost on the road back, every man you set out with, dead. You walk through your own gate, and not a single face lights up. Not your wife's, not the boy who was a baby when you shipped out. To everyone who matters, you're a stranger. But off to one side, on a heap of filth the servants cart out to the fields, something lifts its head. Something old and sick, crawling with flies, that the household gave up on the day you sailed out, and has lain there the whole time you were gone. In the few steps it takes to cross that yard, it will do one small thing, and then it will be too late to take it back. This is a story about the kind of love that asks for nothing, that lies down in the dirt with no promise you're ever coming home and doesn't leave. Let me tell you this story from the Odyssey. 20 years, that's how long he'd been gone. 10 of them at Troy, fighting a war over another man's wife, 10 more trying to get home from it, and we've spent this whole series on those 10. The giant in the cave, the witch who turned his men into pigs, the land of the dead, the goddess who offered him forever, and the sea that took everything else. By the time he finally set foot on his own island, he had nothing. No ships, no crew. Every man who'd sailed out with him was dead. A stranger's boat had carried him the last stretch of water and left him sleeping on the sand. And the island was Ithaca, his home, his kingdom. He dreamed of this for 20 years, and now that he stood on it, he couldn't walk up to his own door because something was wrong with his house. While he was away, word had spread that he was most likely dead, and his house had filled up with men, young lords from Ithaca and the islands around it, more than 100 of them who'd moved into his hall to court his wife. Her name was Penelope. They ate his herds, they drank his cellars dry, they lounged in his seats, ordered his servants around, and told her day after day to stop waiting and pick one of them. And quietly, among themselves, they were planning to kill his son, a boy named Telemachus, who'd been an infant when his father left, and was now a young man, almost old enough to get in their way. So this was what was waiting for the king of Ithaca. Not a feast, not open arms, a house full of enemies who'd forgotten his face, and half an island that hoped he'd never come back. He couldn't just walk in. The most cunning man alive had to know exactly what he was walking into first. So he hid. Now, the goddess of Athena, who'd watched over him since Troy, laid her hands on him and made him old. She bent his back, wrinkled his skin, thinned his hair to gray, and dressed him in rags, with a beggar's stick and a torn bag on a string. The lord of the island turned into the lowest thing on it, an old homeless man with nothing to his name. The disguise was perfect. No one would know him. That was the point. He went first to a man he trusted, his old swineherd, a decent, loyal man named Eumaeus, who kept the king's pigs out past the edge of town. And even Eumaeus didn't recognize him. The man had served Odysseus his whole life, wept for him, prayed for him, and he'd looked straight into that face and saw only a stranger. Now, to feel what this homecoming really costs him, you have to understand one Greek idea. In ancient Greece, a man wasn't himself. He was his house, his oikos. His worth was the order of his home, the loyalty of his people, the honor of his name. Take that away, and you'd taken the man. So picture the lowest a hero can fall. You cross the whole world. You outlast every monster the gods can throw at you. And you come home to find your house eaten alive, your wife under siege, your name turned into a ghost, and you can't even say who you are. You have to stand in your own doorway with your hand out and beg. And so the two of them, the swineherd and the beggar who used to be king, set off up the road toward the palace together. One question hanging over all of it: in a house this far gone, was there anyone left who would still know him? As they came up to the gate of the palace, something was lying in the dirt beside the path. A dog. He was lying on a heap of dung, the muck the servants piled up by the gate to spread on the fields later. That's where he ended up. An old dog, thrown out on a pile of manure, crawling with ticks, too weak to lift himself off it. but he hadn't always been there. This dog had a name, Argos, and the man now standing over him in rags had raised him, back when this was a real home, before any of it went wrong. He'd raised Argos from a pup, and then he'd sailed for Troy before the dog was even grown, before the two of them ever hunted together once. Argos didn't sit around being useless. He grew into the finest hound in Ithaca. Fast, fearless, the dog the young men took out to run down wild goats and deer and hares. Nothing in the woods ever got away from him. The pride of the whole household. That was 20 years ago. Now he was 20 years old. No one took him out anymore. No one fed him much. The same servants who'd once bragged about him stepped over him on their way through the gate. The great hunter of Ithaca lay in the filth where they'd left him, waiting to die. And then the wind shifted. The disguise that had fooled Eumaeus, the disguise that would fool the suitors, that would fool the servants, that would fool even Penelope, his own wife, did not fool the dog. The second Argos caught his master's scent, he knew him. He couldn't get up. He was too far gone to take a single step. But he dropped his ears flat against his head and wagged his tail. That was everything he had left, and he gave it. After 20 years, the only welcome home that needed no proof at all came from a dying dog on a pile of dung. A disguise good enough to fool his own wife, and this half-dead dog saw straight through it in a single breath. If that just got you right in the chest, you're exactly where you should be. Subscribe, because what happens in the next 30 seconds is the part nobody forgets. And the man saw him, the man who'd given nothing away in front of giants, who'd watched his crew eaten alive and kept his head, who was holding the hardest performance of his life right now, because the moment anyone learned the king was home, he was a dead man. That man looked down at his old dog in the dirt, and his eyes filled. He turned his head away and wiped the tear off before Eumaeus could see it, because he couldn't go to him. He couldn't kneel down in the muck and take that old head in his hands. He couldn't say the name. He couldn't let his face crack, not for 1 second. To do any of it was to die. So instead, he nodded at the dog the way a stranger might and asked the swineherd a small, idle question. A fine-looking dog that, for a dung heap. Was he ever any good? Was he only ever a petty thing kept around the table? He asked about his own dog, as if he'd never seen him before in his life. The swineherd looked down and shook his head. "That one," he said, "he was a beauty once. He belonged to the master who died somewhere far away from home. You should have seen him in his prime. Nothing in the woods could outrun him. Best dog I ever knew. But the master's gone," he said, "and servants get lazy when there's no one left to answer to. The woman stopped feeding him a long time ago. Nobody bothers with him now." And he had no idea, none, that he was describing the master to the master, that the old beggar standing beside him in the rags was the one thing this dog had been holding on to the whole time. Then they went inside. The king stepped over his own threshold, into his own hall, full of men eating it alive, and he left his dog behind him in the dirt. And he did not look back. He couldn't. And Argos had held on for 20 years. Through every season the master didn't come. Through the hunger and the ticks and the long slide from the finest dog in Ithaca down to a thing on a heap of dung. He held on for one reason, and he just had it. He'd seen him in the 20th year. The one face he'd been waiting for walked back through the gate. And that moment, the dog saw it. He let go. Death came for him right there, in the dirt, the second his master came home. He hadn't held on to be petted. He hadn't held on to be saved or fed or even called by name. He held on to see him. And the instant he did, he could finally stop. This is the part that wrecks everyone. Everyone else in that house is going to need proof. Penelope will test her own husband to his face before she'll believe it's really him. They'll all want a scar, a secret, a sign, something solid in their hands before they'll open their arms. The dog needed nothing. No disguise on earth could hide his master from him, because love doesn't read the disguise, it reads the person underneath. And the most faithful heart in the whole story got the smallest goodbye there is. A tear it never saw, a master who couldn't even stop walking. And it was enough, because that kind of love was never waiting to be thanked or repaid or even noticed. It was just waiting. He had crossed the whole world to get home, and the first one to know him, the first one to welcome him back, was an old dog in the dirt who'd saved up just enough life to lift his head and see his master one time and go. This one's for the loyal ones, the people who love quietly and wait without being asked and don't always get seen for it. If someone like that comes to your mind, send this video to them. That's who it's for. And right now on your screen is the whole saga, every story in one place. One of my favorites comes next, and it's the other half of this one. While a dog lay dying by the gate, a woman upstairs was holding off 100 men with nothing but a loom and a secret she undid every single night. Start at the beginning or just keep going. Click it right now, and I'll see you in the next story.